Yo guys, welcome to the Zelda fiction. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got neglected and becomes the king of West? Part 3. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. If you were to ask how the competitors of the elemental nations felt about their stay at the capital, most would say either boring or wet because for the last 2 days the weather had been nothing but heavy downpour. It wasn't a storm, it was straight heavy constant downpour, and because of that they didn't really get to enjoy the festival as much as they wanted to. The rain also put a hold on the Olympics for the civilians of this country. So, to put it lightly, no one was happy. Though each group were given a letter of apologies and permitted them to use a facility that was meant for training and that was out of the rain. It still put people off because they couldn't enjoy themselves before the games as much as they hoped to. Then there was the other problem that the leaders of each group had. The emperor wasn't going to be at the games that they came to compete at and instead be at the civilian Olympics. Which made sense to them in a way. He needed to show that he cared about the people that he ruled over, even if he really didn't, and what better way to show that one cares by going to a game for the people he ruled over instead of the foreign guests. To them he seemed like either a very caring ruler or a good liar, but none could really say with much accusation because none of have met the emperor. That was another thing, each hoped to gain an audience with the emperor to discuss the place where it stood and trades that each could benefit from, and from what the rumor was. He had only met with a few leaders. Which ones? No one knew, but most had a good idea to at least one of the leaders. That being the leader of Suna, the Kazekage. These were the thoughts of Minato as he helped his daughter train for the events that she meant to participate in. She was going to participate in 2 of the 4 that they were offering. Those being a hide-seek game of sorts and the final one being one-on-one fighting tournament. He would have to say that most contenders that came for the games were going to participate in the final one and not the other 3. With 2 of the other 3 being designed for special types of participants and the third, well, that one was a different matter on its own. I think that's enough for today. I'm only doing the first and last event. So, this should be fine. Mito said, unintentionally interrupting her father's thoughts. Okay, that's fine. Are you going to head back to the inn? Yeah, I'll be heading back. And with that she waved and started to leave the facility that they could stay in. The facility was actually very similar to the facility that they used to test the genin of Mito's first Chunin examens. It was very plain and shaped in a large rectangle. The walls were a light greenish white and had a stairway near the entrance that led to a platform that hugged all 4 walls. Standing at about 20 feet above the ground. I see I'm not the only one to realize the similarities between your facility and this one, Yellow Flash. Said a gruff and deep voice from behind Minato. I'll admit that it's very similar, but I must ask, what are you doing here, Raikage? I thought that each village was given their own facility. Was Minato's reply to the now named Raikage known as AYECM1. To anyone that was there at the facility, which consisted of a very small amount, it was both slightly unnerving and amazing to see the 2 men together. Men who were once enemies and now rivals. Men that are considered the fastest alive and will be the fastest men to live. Minato with his flying thunder god and A with his lightning strike armor. Technique said to be almost equivalent in terms of speed. So, Flash, how was your trip here? Any mishaps? I asked in a joking manner. Minato folded his arms and looked to where others from his village were training and smiled before answering. Not too exciting really. Had to cross the desert of Suna to get to the country alone and then almost fought with the Kiri group the morning we arrived. Then a slight hiccup at the entrance because of my sensei, though other than that it was uneventful. You? Well, besides hearing about how the emperor is a blessing in this land from every village that we passed almost a week and a half, it was fine. But I'm curious about what your master did to cause hiccup. He didn't try hitting on any gate guards or trying to be a perv, was he? I asked, almost laughing. Minato was about to answer, but the voice of an old man in smoke from a shunshin stopped him. My dear Raikage, I'm no ordinary pervert, I'm a super pervert. Was Jiraiya's response to the Raikage. As he appeared in front of them standing on a toad and striking an odd pose, a pose that both Minato and the eye knew was only for dramatic effect. Minato could only laugh sheepishly and rub the back of his head in embarrassment, while the Raikage could only pinch his nose and sigh. I swear, every time we meet I lose just a little more respect for you. Jiraiya waved off the comment and proceeded to hop off the frog and stand in front of the Tokages. When he got in front of them they realized that this face became serious and quickly adopted the look that the sage sported. There was a reason that I begged to come on this mission, Minato, and it's not because of any of my research either. I honestly thought that was the reason you became a sage in the first place. I said with a snort. Jiraiya shook his head and ignored the comment to continue. When I was around AIM on the way back, I heard a few people talk about how the Kage was leaving to somewhere soon. Okay, so they might come to the west. I don't see how this is that bad. If anything, this actually helps us. We can evaluate them and see if they are strong or still recovering," answered Minato. "Yes, that's a good way to look at it if you know that the information you have is correct." Minato and I both stopped their trains of thought, and I was the first to recover. "What do you mean by if our information is correct, Minato nodded his head in agreement. "Yes, what do you mean? Our intel shows, in so many words, that Hanzo became lazy and arrogant, and in doing so he allowed his skills to become dull." "I have the same information," stated I. "Well yeah, so did I, but when I was coming home from my mission I had picked up on talk about a festival. A festival that celebrates a battle that had involved Hanzo and the new Amikage. The battle? Our intel says he was assassinated in his home." "Yeah, I have the same intel. So that's why I was curious and did some more investigating on the village and who this new Kage was before I came back, and I found some interesting things to say the least." Jiraiya paused and his face became worried. As if trying to find the easiest way to word the things he wanted to say without totally scaring them. "Well, say it already. The sun will be setting soon and there is supposed to be a feast today that the two diplomats that were giving out the invitations for the games are hosting for the competitors later tonight and I wish to get ready soon." Jiraiya looked at the Raikage and in a calm and cool voice said. "The Kage that defeated Hanzo and is most likely coming here is not just any rinky-dink assassin." "Well? Sensei, who was it that killed him?" Minato asked quietly. Jiraiya paused and looked away from both his student and the Raikage. Sporting an expression that showed a conundrum of emotions that varied from happiness to sadness and regret. Though after taking a moment to compose himself he looked at the two Kages, now showing no expression and presenting a calm face. "The man that killed him and the current Kage of AIM is a student of mine. Who I trained during the last war." Though Minato on the inside was shocked and couldn't bring himself to say anything. The Minato that was in front of his master and his fellow Kage showed no sign of being affected, only showing a calculative look. I shared the same look that Minato was giving but decided to be the first to speak. "What was so special about this student that you can so easily believe it to be him?" Jiraiya looked uneasy at the question that was asked of him. Debating whether it was alright to say why in front of another Kage, even though said Kage was on friendly terms with his student Minato. He looked to Minato and after seeing a head nod he spoke with a sigh. "The reason I know he defeated him is because the student I am talking about is in possession of an extremely powerful Dojutsu." "Don't tell me it's a member of the uchiha," was Minato's quiet and quick response. Jiraiya snorted. "Minato, I wish it was an uchiha. It would be a lot easier to deal with. And no, it isn't a Byakugan user." I snorted in response and crossed his arms over his chest. If it's not the Byakugan or the Sharingan, what could be possibly more dangerous than that? Again, Jiraiya paused almost as if afraid to say the name. "The Rinnegan." He paused to gauge the expressions of the two Kages and what he saw didn't surprise him. Both had looks of disbelief on their faces. Faces that showed how neither believed the words that came from his mouth. And it was that reaction that made Jiraiya chuckle humorlessly. "My student's name is Nagato and he is the only person in human history to possess the Rinnegan beside the Sage of Six Paths. With Mito. Sometime after sunset. Mito, you look so beautiful. If you weren't turning heads before now you definitely will be," said the voice of her mother. "Mom," Mito said with a sigh. "You look beautiful. You'll have suitors lining up from here to Konoha." "Mom, I told you already that I'm not looking for anyone right now." She paused. "And plus, most guys don't have the balls to ask or say anything. Almost everyone that's from the elemental nations knows how I am with guys. I'd say most are afraid even to talk to me." It was true. Well, she was considered one of the cutest or most beautiful in her village. Guys were just too afraid of her and the family she belonged to. It didn't help being the daughter of not only one, but two of the strongest ninjas in the village and goddaughter to two of the three Sannin. The few that are brave enough are scared off by herself. Though those were on purpose. She just didn't feel ready to see people that way yet. Yeah, she had friends that were guys and she was pretty sure one or two of them liked her that way, but even if they asked she didn't think she would be able to say yes. She for one valued her friendship with all her friends and she's seen some friends that were couples never talk to each other after they tried to date. So, she tried to stay away from it. "Well, either way. You still look awesome in that yukata," said one of newer people in the room. Mito turned around to see her two best friends, Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga as they entered the room and then a look that told her that she didn't want her here anymore. Her mother sighed, "Alright, that's it for me. I'll leave you girls to your devices and I'll meet you girls at the feast." And with that Kushina left to get ready herself. She turned back to her friends before responding. "You guys don't look so bad yourselves." Her friends both smiled while looking down at each of their own yukatas. Hinata wore a light purple kimono that with no designs and had a grayish white obi that went around her midsection to keep the kimono in place. The only design that she had that was a part of her kimono was a little button on the front of the obi that was painted and in the shape of a yin and yang symbol. Ino had a similar yukata to Hinata's. She had a kimono that was dark purple with yellow flower designs that were at both the top and the bottom of the kimono. She also had a light yellow obi that went around her midsection. Though unlike Hinata's, this obi had no design. I feel as if I missed a memo on color coordinating. Mito said as she laughed into her hand. Yeah, ours look nice, but come on. You look like a freaking princess, though I guess in a way you are, but that's beside the point. Hinata is an actual princess and you're outdoing her without even trying. No offense, Hinata. Hinata shook her head and chuckled. It's fine, Ino, but really Mito, you look very nice. At that, Mito blushed a bit from the compliment. Thanks, but it's nothing special really. Mito then looked down at her yukata. To her it wasn't really anything special. It was a kimono that went from black on top to a very dark red as it neared the ends at her feet and was trimmed out with a mixture of black and dark reds. The obi that went around her midsection was a beige-ish yellow. She also let her red hair down, which had grown to around her mid-back since Seal and Alois had visited. To her she felt both naked and out of place with what she was wearing. She was never one to dress up for things like this and because of that she often avoided political missions altogether. To her it was odd not having a single weapon on her person. Really, nothing special. Girl, you're going to have guys looking at you all night. I hope that the guy you dance with, if there is any dancing, wore steel-toe shoes. Cause all you're going to be doing is stepping on his toes. Ino laughed. That won't happen, I'll have you know that I'm an excellent dancer, was Mito's red-faced reply. Oh, stop that, Ino. If you keep embarrassing her, the gentleman won't be able to find her because her face will blend in with her hair. Hinata said with a giggle. Again, Mito blushed but let the comment slide. So, are you girls ready then? Both Ino and Hinata nodded their heads, signaling that they were ready, and with that they left the compound that the Konoha competitors were allowed to stay in. As they exited they had noticed that the constant rain had seemed to have stopped for a while, and because it had stopped they finally got to see the city as they should have. The city was once again celebrating the festival that should have been going for 3 days, and even now when the festival was up and running again they couldn't attend it because they were expected to go to a feast because they were guests in a different country. Even though in the invitation it said that it wasn't mandatory to go and was just a show of good intentions and apologies for the bad weather. It's because of that she didn't want to really go whether it was still raining or it stopped. Though the thing that ticked her off was where this feast was going to be held. The feast that they were going to was hosted by Seal and Alois. Which she didn't mind, they seemed like good people, but it was the fact of where it was. Alois and Seal lived in mansions that was out of the city and a bit out in the countryside. It wasn't far enough from the city gate where it would take longer than an hour on foot, but was still far enough for people to need something that the West called couches, which were essentially a fancy word for carriages. So, it was the fact that she and her friends needed to make their way to the city gates. To get on a coach to get to the party or feast. They walked in silence at first, each choosing to watch the festival that they wished they could have gone to. Until Ino decided to break the silence. So, you think that there'll be any guys that catch your eye, Hinata? I don't know. Though even if there is, I still would like to marry someone from the elemental nations. I think it would be very difficult to have a relationship with anyone from the West. Especially if something were to happen early on in our country's relationship that may provoke war. I mean, I was just talking about dancing with someone and maybe spending the night at his or her place, if you catch my drift. Ino said as she nudged a blushing Hinata in the side. I didn't even think of marriage. Does little Hinata have her sights locked on someone already? Hinata stuttered from embarrassment and blushed a redder red than Mito's hair. And no, I was just being hypothetical. Though it might sound nice to settle down with someone from the West or maybe spend the night with someone from here. Let's not forget that, 1, if there was a marriage then it would be with one of the higher ups in the political world of the West. Like a councilman or some clan heir, and won't be with someone you truly love. And 2, if you did spend the night with someone there are too many things that could lead to a political and potentially conflicted future. Like say if a girl were to get pregnant. I can almost guarantee that there would be conflict on where the child should be raised and other such things. There was a long silence after that. As Ino and Hinata proceeded the somewhat dark scenarios that Mito had made. Geez Mito, way to kill the mood. Ino complained. Hey, I'm just being realistic here. It would be like when the council suggested that I marry Sasuke. Neither of us saw each other in that way, and Sasuke was still coming to terms with her death. Mito replied with a shrug. Yeah, I remember when they suggested that to him. I was there to watch and learn from my father when he nearly killed the man who suggested it. Hinata said in a quiet voice. Wait, now that I think about it, where is Sasuke? Isn't he supposed to compete in the final event? Yeah, I was confused too. So, I asked my father about it and he said in so many words that he, and I think a few others, were going to arrive later. And though before Ino could ask her question, they had seemed to have arrived to where the coaches were waiting and seemed to be stopped by a man in a butler suit of some kind. "Hello, are you here for the party at the Phantomhive residence?" The three girls nodded their heads in unison at the butler's question and followed the man as he ushered them into a coach that was just outside of the gate that they arrived at. As they walked they saw others from the elemental nations like the Mizukage and her blue-haired swordsman and a few others from their village. Such as Kiba, Shikamaru and Choji a bit always behind them. Now this coach will take you to the mansion. When you arrive there simply tell the servants at the front door your names and they will let you in. And Miss Namikaze, I was told that by His Highness Alois Trancy and Lord Phantomhive that they wish to speak with you. This got the girls to focus more on the butler more as he closed the door behind them and faced them through a window on the door. "And what would Mr. Alois and Mr. Phantomhive wish to speak with me about?" Mito asked, giving the man a confused look. The butler in turn only smiled at the question. "It is not my place to ask questions, my lady. All the servants out here were told to tell you this if any of us were to guide you to your coach," he said and then bowed. Mito looked at the servants and then at the others and saw that some, not all, but some were looking at her. Though they were quick to turn away when they noticed her looking at them. She then turned back to the servant before her and sighed. "Ami, if you're out there let the ride there be quiet and not filled with questions," she thought and then looked at the servant again. "Is that all?" The man nodded while still in his bow and it only got another sigh out of Mito. "Okay, then we better get going." And with that the coach quietly pulled away from the gates into the open fields that surround the capital and toward the forest line that led to the mansion. No one said a word in the coach because the expressions on two of the three girls' faces said all that needed to be said. One, an annoyed face with her hand pinching the bridge of her nose and the other smiling teasingly at the other. "Don't even fucking say." "Oh, don't worry. I won't say anything." "So instead of an apartment or house, you're staying the night at a mansion." "God damn it, Ino." Phantomhive estate. While the girls were riding the Phantomhive estate was in a frenzy. Preparing the last things that need to be prepared, which were really only the foods that were supposed to be served. That is what the head of the Phantomhive walked into as he walked down the main stairs that were in the entrance to the mansion. He sighed and began to walk down the stairs towards the main entrance. As he reached the main floor his head butler had walked up to him with Alois and his head maid following behind him. Who looked to be whining to his butler about something. "Sebastian, why won't you let Claudius do the table performance? I think that it would be really cool," complained Alois. "We can't do that because we won't be eating at a table. My lord wished there to be a single table of food that the guests are allowed to pick from. From there the guests will be able to eat what they want freely at any time," was Sebastian's answer. "But he can do the table trick using that table." Yes, he could have. If it wasn't already full of food already. After that remark the banging of a door was heard. The two demon kings shared a look and their servants did as well. "Well, the other reason is because the guests are here," Sebastian said with a smile as he began to walk towards the door. Seal turned to Alois as Sebastian walked to open the door. "Alois, can you please take care of the guests while I check on a few last minute things?" "Yeah, I can handle it. I mean come on, I'm Alois Trancy. What could go wrong?" Seal gave him a look that showed the little faith he held in him. "Hannah, please keep an eye on him," Seal asked as he began to walk up the stairs that he just came down from. "I will do my best, Lord Seal." The now named head maid then bowed while sporting a small smirk that showed her amusement. "Wait. Seal, come on. You know you can trust me." Alois got no response from Seal as he continued up the stairs. "I know that you're not going to check on anything related to the party. The only thing you want to check on is your little mouse." Again, he received no response as he reaches the final step of the stairs and disappeared into the hall. At that, Alois bowed. "I miss the days when Seal was so easy to tease." Hannah looked at her master with an amused smile. "It was a time when you were both young and inexperienced demons. Both trying to understand the changing world and women. Yes, I must say that the world isn't as it once was." There was a long pause as both demons thought on the past. Each one with a different look on the way history had changed. With the only sound of arriving guests and the growing sound of talking in the hall where the party was to be hosted. "Your Highness, we must get to the party and introduce ourselves as one of the hosts," Hannah said after another moment. Alois didn't move from his spot. Which was still at the base of the stairs, still lost in thought. Though after a few more seconds he finally spoke. "Hannah, you ever wonder what the world would have looked like if that Jackson kid won?" Alois asked, almost like in a trance. Hannah gained a look of confusion. "Who? Your Highness?" Alois could only shake his head. "No one, never mind." And with that his smile returned and his happy-go-lucky attitude re-emerged. Now let's see if I can get Claudius or you to do some trick so we can entertain our guests. With Mito and co. You've got to be kidding me. It's very big. If that's the place you're spending the night and I'm so jealous. Mito sighed. I'm not spending my night with anyone. Alright. Oh, you keep telling yourself that, but when that Alois boy comes up to you, I bet you won't keep saying that then. Ino once again teased. Mito pinched the bridge of her nose. This was how she spent her entire ride from the capital. Listening to Ino's constant teasing about hooking up with one of the Prince Charmings as she dubbed the two diplomats. Anyways, I can't believe the size of Lord Phantomhive's mansion. I mean, I know that a mansion is supposed to be big, but this is ridiculous. The girls seeing a home like this was new. The mansions they were used to were nothing like this. Hell, they didn't even really have mansions in the elemental nations. The closest things that were close to this were the Hokage mansion, and really that was just a glorified workplace. The building was built in the shape of squares and rectangles and made of a beige stone. There were many windows that covered the house, and while there were many that they couldn't see through all of them. They could only partially see through the lit ones where she suspected the party was held. As the coach got closer to the mansion, they could see a fountain in front of it right before the curb that they were going to be dropped off on. Seeing based on where the other people were being dropped off. When the coach finally came to a stop, the door of the coach was opened and they were let out in front of the fountain and proceeded to walk towards the front of the mansion where Seal's head butler, Sebastian, stood asking for the names of guests. As they walked towards the entrance, they saw many people that they recognized. The group ahead of them were the Kumo team that belonged to the 8-tailed Jinchuriki. Mito and the girls weren't really friends and instead more like acquaintances. Mito really saw no problem with them and it was the same for Ino, but Hinata it was weird, though that was a different story for another time. As the guests ahead of them entered the house, the girls stepped up and were greeted with a smile from Seal's head butler. Oh, so you came, Miss Namikaze. My lord and Alois thought that you weren't coming after all. See Sinbad. Mito tried. Sebastian smiled and gave a small chuckle. It's Sebastian, my lady. Yes, Sebastian, sorry. Mito gave an apologetic smile and rubbed the back of her head shyly. Yeah, I wasn't originally going to come because it was kind of a last-minute thing that you guys did, but my mother and father forced me. I also didn't know that Alois wished to talk to me. It is alright, my lady. Originally, we weren't going to have anything like this at all. So, I don't see why the Lord and His Highness could or would be upset with you. He then looked to the side and saw her friends and proceeded to smile at them. Oh, and who might you two might be? Before I let you all in, I'll need the names of everyone for safety measures, of course. Ino and Hinata blushed when the man before them looked to them and they saw how handsome he was. Ino though was the first to speak up. I'm Ino Yamanaka and she's Hinata Hyuga. We're both friends of Mito. Sebastian looked down at his book that he pulled out from the inside pocket of his dress coat and proceeded to read through it until his eyes stopped and he looked up again to smile at the two girls beside Mito. You seem to be here on the list, so you three may enter. The girls then proceeded to walk into the mansion, though not before Sebastian called out to them again, well, more Mito. Oh, Miss Namikaze, if you wish to have your questions answered about your family, I suggest you find Master Aloy soon. I believe one of the other guests are planning to leave early tonight. Ino and Hinata gave each other confused looks before looking at Mito to see what he meant, but when they saw the face Mito made they grew more confused. Mito had a face that in the span of only 2 seconds let loose a plethora of emotions out. Though just like how fast those 2 seconds came, they quickly disappeared. Mito then smiled and thanked the man and proceeded to the door where the party was being held. Mito, what was he talking about? Hinata asked. Again, Hinata and Ino gave each other curious looks before they walked to catch up with their friend. Only to stop and stare at a butler who seemed to be on top of the ledge that was a part of a hallway and overlooked the hall that the party was in. Naruto, a few minutes before Mito arrived. Beautiful, that was the only thing that could be said to describe the hall that the Phantomhive Manor used to host parties. The wallpaper was beige and looked to be trimmed in gold. The floor of the hall was a maroon color and in the center of the hall was a table that had food earlier. Though now it seemed to have disappeared. This is where Naruto watched as more guests for the feast appeared in the hall of the Phantomhive Manor where the party was to be held. He had been the first one there, along with his wife Retsu, and only had to wait a little bit for the other guests to arrive. Originally his council had suggested that he introduce himself to the other counties, but was quickly shut down by him and his hand. His hand saying that it was too dangerous to do something like that. Stating that even though he was the most powerful man in the West, that didn't mean he was the most powerful in the East as well. The only reference they had being a few ninjas that sought out refuge from the elemental nations for being wanted, or as they are known in their country, Nukenin, or missing shinobi. Which also weren't many to begin with. And most of the ones that they did come across or vice versa weren't the friendliest to begin with. Of course, after hearing that most of the council agreed, but were still a bit curious as to why he didn't want to reveal himself. Most thought that it had to do with his past. Which was actually a very good guess as to why he wouldn't want to, since they all knew of his past already. Hell, even some suggested that guess immediately after hearing Lalich's reason. Though sadly for them it wasn't a reason. There were only two, pathetic if someone asked his council, reasons as to why he didn't want to reveal himself. Which was firstly because he just felt lazy and didn't want to deal with their leaders asking him about trade treaties and peace treaties. He already had to deal with paperwork that involved the entire West. Which was an extremely larger amount compared to the amount that his kings and queens received. And the second was because he wanted to catch up with a friend who he hadn't seen in person since he was 8, but had kept in contact with through letters that they would write to each other when they both had time. Which sadly wasn't very often considering that he was the emperor, basically a continent and leader of 5 countries, and his friend was the leader of Suna, village hidden by sand. As his thoughts continued he didn't realize that said friend was being led to him. "Emiya. I have a friend that you wanted to see," spoke the voice of Alois. Naruto then focused back on his surroundings and looked to where he heard Alois speak to him. The friend that he had been just thinking about, Gaara. Gaara was still a bit on the small side with a height at around 5'4". He had red hair and it seemed to be combed down while being parted to his left. Though he guessed that his hair was only combed like this because he was attending a party. He had pale skin and green pupil-less eyes with tanuki-like black rings around his eyes. He wore a crimson trench coat and full-length dark trousers. "Hello, Naruto. It has been a long time," Gaara said in a calm and relaxed tone. At that, Naruto smiled. "Indeed, it has, it is good to see you," he said and offered Gaara a handshake. Which he took and shook. "Though please just call me Emiya. I don't want Konoha to get any ideas." At that, Gaara's face changed into one of confusion. "Won't they recognize you at least a little, and isn't that your surname?" "Yes, it is, but I don't think anyone from your country knows, and no. I don't think they would. I mean most probably think I'm dead already so they won't be looking for me, and if they do well I'm missing the things that would give me away," he said pointing a finger at his cheek. Gaara looked and sighed knowing that he was probably right. He had heard from his sister Mito. About how much his village hated him and how even his family held some resentment. Plus, Mito, the only person who actually genuinely cared for him and was looking for him to date, didn't enjoy parties like these, so he doubted that she was here and would see him. "Yes, you're most likely right, but don't ask me for assistance if they suspect you," he said with a smile. Naruto chuckled. "Don't worry, I don't plan to stay long. I promised that I would pick something up for my daughter. So, I can't stay late since the shops close early with the games starting tomorrow." "Ah, yes, you said that you had a little one and that you have married 3 wives. Are they here?" he asked looking around for anyone that might have described in his letters. Though after looking around and looking back he saw that Naruto gave him a sad smile. "I'm married to 2 and have a lover who is considered a wife by many. Though I don't see her very often because of her given duties. The one I first spoke of passed away, but that was a couple years ago and I have moved on. She wouldn't have wanted me to hold on to the past for too long." Gaara put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and gave him a reassuring smile. "I won't lie and say that I know what it is like to completely lose someone, but I can sympathize because of the loved ones around me. As long as you keep her memories with you, she will always remain with you." Naruto then gave a more pleasant smile. "Thank you, Gaara. I appreciate your condolences." Gaara returned the smile and watched as Naruto grabbed 2 drinks of what looked to be wine from a servant who was carrying a tray full of them. He then gave one of the glasses to Gaara. "Let us drink to her and to our loved one," he said as he held out his glass. "Yes, to our loved ones," Gaara said as he clinked glasses with him and slowly sipped from the wine. As they both slowly drank the contents of their own glasses, music started to play in the background and Alois, who seemed to have left after leaving Gaara with him, standing near one of the doors that led out of the large hall and into the kitchen, trying to get everyone's attention. "Hello and welcome to Lord Phantomhive Manor. I am Alois Trancy and I'm co-hosting this party and the games. Even though I know most of the guests aren't here yet. I am here to thank you myself and on behalf of the Lord Seal Phantomhive for coming to this party and here to apologies for the inconvenience of the weather on behalf of the Emperor, who is also busy, and apologies for not being able to make it." At that, Naruto could hear some people grumble about how the Emperor seemed to always be busy. Because of this inconvenience. The Emperor wishes for the leaders and their contestants to stay for 1 or 2 more days. So that they may discuss trades and other such things. After that last comment, Naruto looked over the guests that have arrived to see that they seemed a little pleased that he would ask them to stay here just so they could have a day or 2 to discuss such things. While some others looked annoyed. For either having to stay longer or for feeling like they were considered insignificant. "So now that such pleasantries are over, I may have my butler serve the food," Alois then looked over to where a small group of musicians who were the ones playing before Alois interrupted to make his announcement were. Which made the musicians begin to play. Finally, he looked towards the far wall to stare at his butler standing on a ledge. Now to everyone there, they were about to witness the most amazing and scariest performance they have ever seen. Amazing because of the movements and swiftness, and scary because most of them couldn't actually see every movement bar a few people. Play the demon butler of Trancy, or at least have in head when reading. It should be the first one. Good luck not stuttering. The butler started his performance by tapping his foot to the beat of the song being played by the musicians. His tapping picked up and continued to increase as the beat picked up. Though he stopped and he turned around for all the guests to see his face when the musicians began to play a higher pitch. After giving the people below a smile or smirk, depending on who you asked. He proceeded to jump off the ledge and grabbed onto the chandelier that hung from the ceiling and then swung himself over the long table below him. Only to land in front of his master and kneel before him. Almost as if asking for permission to continue, and with a slight nod of Alois's head he did so. He turned around and grabbed the long table sheet on the table. Threw up a sheet also sending multiple vases that had flowers in them into the air and then proceeded to jump towards said vases to grab them all out of the air. His jump carried him back to where he started his performance, and while he flew he let go of the vases as he reached his point of origin. Though instead of the vases breaking on contact as they met the ledge, they remained fine and landed without a sound. When he landed, he looked back at the sheet that was in midair and then once again leaped off the edge. Though this time as he soared through the air things were thrown at him. Many of the guests that had never seen this performance or those who couldn't keep up with the fast movement wondered what were these things that were thrown at him. Though those who have seen this before and those who could keep up saw that those things were plates filled with food. So as plate after plate reached him he proceeded to catch them and simply tossed them over the still falling sheet. As the final plate was thrown from the butler's hand he landed on the ground once again kneeling in front of Alois, and when the sheet fell onto the table along with the food, without a single thing out of place mind you, did he stand up to face the awestruck crowd, bowed, and said, "Your Highness, dinner is served." End of still playing. With that, the people gathered there looked on in again amazement and fear. No sound came from them. No words or whispers. Just complete and utter silence. That is until there was a single clap. A clap that was made from the entrance of the hall. Where 3 young women stood. With the middle one, Aridid, being the only one clapping. Though after a few claps others started to join in and before anyone knew it, almost the entire hall was giving applause to the butler and his master for such an amazing yet troubling performance. Naruto could only shake his head amusedly at both the antic of Alois and who he guessed was his sister for being the first to clap. "Only her?" he said with an amused voice. Gaara followed as his line of sight as he continued to clap and gave a small smile. "Indeed. Will you say anything to her?" Naruto shook his head. "No, I don't plan to. If she notices me then so be it, and if she realizes who I am, well there isn't much I can do," Naruto says with a small smile. "Again, I don't plan to stay long." "Mito. That was amazing. I couldn't even keep up with him." "Hinata, could you?" Ino asked. "Barley, and that was with my Byakugan," Hinata said with a shocked expression. Mito all the while clapped and continued to until the clapping started to calm down and the guests all gathered around the table to get food onto their plates. Mito then walked into the hall and went to the center table to grab a plate as well. That is, she tried to, when all of a sudden, she was tapped on the shoulder. With a slight jump she quickly turned around to see who had tapped her, and when she did she was greeted with the sight of Seal and the woman from before, who she believed was named Ranmu or something like it. "Geez, don't scare me like that." Seal gave a friendly smile. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to." Mito sighed. "It's alright." As she finished she could hear Ino snigger behind her and mumble to herself about staying the night, which got a small and almost unnoticed blush from Hinata. Well, Mito just ignored her. "So," she continued, "you obviously want to tell me something or talk to me since you got my attention." Seal gave her face filled with mock pain. "Oh, how you hurt me. Can't I just talk to you or say hi?" Well, if that's all, then I can't talk. I need to talk to Alois. Your butler Sebastian said that he needed to speak to me about something pertaining to my family." At that comment Seal's face dropped all playfulness and he took on a more serious face. "Did he know?" "Well, if you wanted to speak to him he's not available at the moment. He didn't listen to me about something and is now paying the price." Ino spoke up this time. "Oh, you mean the Alois with the cool servant? The one that was up front? He should be Ino stopped when she turned around to see no Alois up there or anywhere within the hall. "Again, he is unavailable now. Though I have an idea of who he intended you to speak to. If you wish to continue and meet this person I ask that your friend stay behind or at least don't follow you. This person wishes for his heritage to remain a secret. So, I ask that your friends forget this conversation entirely. He said in a calm yet very serious voice and looked to Mito's two friends as he neared the end of his statement. Mito in turn looked at her two friends with a pleading look in her eyes. Her eyes showing them the desperation and the agonizing fear in the thought of them saying no. Ino was first and gave a pout. Fine, I'll forget that we had this conversation and that Mito's about to sneak out to see a guy. While Hinata just nodded her head softly. Seal then gave them a semi-happy smile and asked them to wait there as he and the woman went to tell who she was going to meet that she was here. When they were gone. Ino was the first to speak. Mito, what the hell was he talking about you meeting a family member? She said, her voice serious. At that Mito didn't give an answer right away. Wondering if it was alright to tell them. Though after a few moments of internal struggle she relented and shared how she had a short chat with the self-proclaimed twin demon kings of hell. How she had asked them if they had any idea who her brother was. She told them how they had explained that they didn't know her brother but did know someone from the clan that she was a part of. Both of her friends' reactions weren't really expressed as they were in the middle of a party. With different people from different nations and countries so they restrained themselves from making a scene. Though both gave her looks that expressed their desire to know more and Mito nodded her head in agreement to their desire. As the girls finished up their silent chat. The woman returned and asked Mito to follow her out of the hall into the main entrance and up the stairs that faced the front doors. As she followed she looked on at the design of the house and the beautiful paintings that they passed. Though as she walked past more and more she noticed that their style was extremely different from the ones from the east and it slightly piqued her interest. These were paintings that seemed more accurate and more detailed than the ones she'd seen when she had visited the mansion of the fire daimyo. Ranmu? She asked hesitantly. Ranmao, said the beautiful woman in a flat voice. Is that how you say it? Asked Mito. Though in turn she received no answer and only a slight nod of the head. Okay, well I just wanted to know who painted these. That is if you can tell me. The painting that we have in the east aren't as detailed like this one. She said and stopped to point to a painting that held a woman from mid-stomach up. The woman had short red hair that reached just under her chin and fair skin that made her red eyes pop. She wore a red shoulder-less dress that seemed to have black feathers along the accent of the back of the dress. She held a single red rose and face off to the side as if noticing something important. This woman is drawn beautifully. Hell, I thought she was really real for a second. Do you know who painted this or who this woman is for that matter? Ranmao stopped and turned to face the picture that Mito was pointing to. The woman stared at the picture. All the while having a calm and almost uncaring face. Though after a few more moments. She tilted her head to the side and in a whisper so low Mito barely heard it. Misread. And without another word that turned around to continue to where she was being taken. Mito thought it was strange the way she said. It was almost as if Ranmao had recognized it but just fell short of knowing. Like a deja vu moment, like when you think you've experienced something that you really didn't, but who was she to intrude on the life of the woman? If anything, it would be better to just stay out of it and forget it because who knows what a shitstorm that could lead into knowing her luck. Naruto. You're joking, right? You're not actually going to bring her in here? No, I'm being completely serious. She wanted to meet a member of her old clan. So, I've granted her wish. Seal said with a smirk on his face. You always complain about my soulless elf and how I have no heart. So, when I do try to be nice for once in my demonic life. This is the thanks I get. Naruto growled. Don't give me that bullshit. What the hell are you planning? Why would you tell my sister that she has a living relative here? She could recognize me and then what would happen, huh? Seal looked on with a passive face not responding to his question and waited for Naruto to continue. Well let me tell you. She'll go tell the entire group and then they'll either A. accept it. Which is the least likely. B. Try to kill me, C. Try to bring me back, or D. Try to kill my family. Now tell me how is this in any way beneficial? Seal looked on at his emperor with a calm and almost uncaring face. Before he started to speak in an almost too casual manner. Well first of all, I remember you saying that you weren't that scared of the family you left behind. Naruto growled again. I'm not scared of them specifically. I'm scared of what they might do to the people I love and the people of this continent. Seal gave a nod in acceptance. As if saying that he approved of his worry. And secondly it's not beneficial always and I only did this for entertainment. Naruto just looked on with a jaw that hit the floor hard and would have probably gone through the floor into the room below, for if not in that moment they heard a knock at the door. A knock that gave Seal a smirk and Naruto a slight heart attack. Naruto quickly calmed himself, then looked to the door and back to Seal and sighed into his hand. I will talk with her, but she will not know who exactly I am and you will interrupt wherever we are at in conversation in 15 minutes exactly. To tell me that Retsu is looking for me and so that I may leave. Naruto said with his face still covered by his hand. showing the slight stress that this upcoming talk was causing him. Seal simply gave him smug smile before addressing the people waiting outside. Ran Mao, come in. Mito. After hearing the voice of Seal, notifying them that it was alright to come in. Ran Mao twisted the knob on the door and pushed ever so slightly. Almost seeming to enjoy the last few milliseconds it took to open the door, and when she finally did she was given a sight she did not expect. What Mito expected was a man that was either middle-aged or older than her parent with fair skin, violet eyes, graying red hair that was maybe in a bun, and with either a beard or short goatee, and maybe a scare or two across the face. Let it be known that she was imaginative, but no, what was before her was a young man. But slightly tanned skin and was a well-built man that was both slim and muscular in the places that mattered most. Though it was a bit difficult to see from under the black kimono, and that was under a plain gold-like haori jacket. He seemed just under 6 foot at around 5'11" and had the fair complexion she expected, but he didn't have red hair or violet eyes or even facial hair. No, instead he had golden straight hair that went just a little past his ear. A clean-shaven face with not even a hint of stubble. Though there was one thing that threw her off. Something that made her think of her twin brother, and that was his blood-red eyes. His eyes looked to be the same crimson orbs that her twin had, and though some part of her hoped it was him, she knew it wasn't. Though how she knew that was because of the 3 whisker marks that marked him as the holder of the Kyuubi were not there. She remembered the marks on his cute chubby cheeks. Though here on this man were no such marks. It was the Kyuubi's mark, and to remove the marks meant that he removed the Kyuubi and lived. Though now that she thought about it, he looked very similar to what he would have probably looked like if he was with them today in the village, and oh how that thought brought her great sadness. The thoughts of her twin made her quickly look away and brought back memories that were in truth filled with great happiness and were some of the greatest she probably possessed, but it was those thoughts that brought on the memories of some of the horrors that he faced as a kid and shame at being powerless to prevent it. Though as fast as those thoughts came they were just as quickly put to the side. She knew now was not the time to act this way. No, it was time to question her distant relative about their culture. A culture that she knew nothing about and Mother barely knew thanks to being forced to leave at an early age. So, she quickly looked back at the man before her. Walked up to him slowly and stood in front of him no more than 4 feet away from him. Silence is what followed and would have for a long time. If not for the voice of Seal that had carried over to the two on his walk to the door. Well Mito, this is our resident Uzumaki. Though he does not go by that surname anymore and is just referred to as Emiya. So, go ahead and ask your questions and talk to him for a bit. I will be just outside the door. And with that the door closed, leaving the unknowing twins together. After about a minute of complete and utterly awkward silence. Emiya just sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose, and then turned around to sit in one of the chairs that surrounded a table behind him. Sit. He said, waving her towards him. Mito slowly walked towards him and sat in the middle of a couch that was across from him. She had worked in her head about how to start a conversation with him since Seal had left to inform him about her being here, and when she had confronted him after she had steeled her emotions about her brother and whatnot, she froze. Yeah, this wasn't going as planned. So, I was told that you wished to speak to me. Why? Emiya asked in a calm and cool voice. Mito, finally unfrozen, gave a sheepish look and rubbed the back of her head. Yeah, I did. You still have that nervous tick that you got from Minato. He thought. Okay. So, what did you want to talk about? He asked, though this time his voice softened a little bit. I want to know about our clan and why you decided to change the name. About our clan? You mean the Uzumaki? There isn't much I could tell you in all honesty. What? Why not? She questioned. Well, that's because I wasn't raised by an Uzumaki. My parents kinda didn't want me, so they just kicked me to the curb at a young age, and I was later picked up and adopted by a man named Kiritsugu Emiya. That's why I don't use that name. Emiya said rather bluntly. Oh, Mito said quietly. She tensed a bit at the fact that she had said something that might have hit home and might make him not want to speak with her. I'm sorry to hear that. Though Emiya just waved at her dismissively. It's fine. Bastards missed out on a great and an awesome son. He said with a hint of a smile. Mito relaxed a bit when she saw the smile and couldn't help herself but to smile as well. I guess they did. But it sounded like you knew something. You said you couldn't tell me much. His hint of a smile turned into a slightly bigger one. We have an observant one here. That's good. Though considering how you people live, it isn't a surprise. Mito scrunched her face and the smile she had turned into a frown. Is that an insult to my people? Emiya's smile grew even bigger. And a patriot as well. He then raised a hand to his chin. I can answer your first question and a no to your second. I am only stating a fact. You live in a world of shadows and assassins. You may call yourself other names, but that is what most of you are considered by definition. I'm only stating what your job requires you to do, and it's because of that job that you are observant outside of it as well. So, tell me, is that an insult? Mito gave him a deadpan stare. You know what? Never mind. She really didn't feel like getting into a philosophical discussion about her job or the wording in which you should word things. So, can you tell me what you know? He sighed. Well, it's not much. Since I was abandoned at a young age. I really didn't remember much or if they even celebrated anything. Though when I was with my father. He took an interest in my name and researched it in one of the bigger cities. What he found he told me about. This was in a way true. Since he was new to this world, Kiritsugu didn't know how it worked. Who were people to look out for? What countries and people ruled? And in doing so he discovered that each nation had its variety of clans that were allied with certain villages, or cities as he called them. So, when he found this out he wished to see if the child he had decided to save had anything to his name. For this was the main reason that he and Kiritsugu had stayed in Suna for so long. He visited their libraries and other places that sorted history to see what he could find on both the Namikaze and Uzumaki. Though how Naruto found out he was a Uzumaki was a story for another time. Well, okay, what did he find then? She asked curiously. Like I said, he didn't find much, and considering he was in village that wasn't a home for or allied with them, it's a surprise he found something at all. But the gist of it was that the Uzumaki were a people to fear. This got two emotions out of Mito. One of fear and one of pride. Fear because it meant that they might have feared them for a good reason. Maybe they were trained mercenaries or sacrificed their young for power, and pride because if they were feared for a more noble reason then that meant that that clan's blood ran through her veins. Why were they feared? She asked after a moment of hesitation. Well, they were feared because of a couple of reasons. The first and more noteworthy is that they were considered masters in the arts of sealing. Mito quickly thought about it and could agree. She had seen her mother work on seals with her father all the time when they had a better relationship. Her father, while good in his own right, had owed a large amount of gratitude to her mother in teaching and helping him with some of the seals that he had now and some seals that the village uses. Second, their amazing kenjutsu techniques and users. Again, something she noticed with her mother and herself. While not well versed in the way of the sword, Mito knew enough to get by, but against your average sword wielder and has seen that she could pick up the training pretty quickly. Also, her mother when in service was known as the Red Death for a reason, so it made sense. Third, they were known to heal extremely fast and suspected to have longer and stronger lifespans forces than most people. At maybe around 150 years give or take. The second clan to come close is the Namikaze who were around 100 give or take. Well, she did heal fast, though she just contributed to it being the fox in her gut. But living that long? She couldn't really know. The only Uzumaki that had any medical records to confirm her age was the original Mito Uzumaki, the one she was named after, but even they didn't know her actual age. She would have to confront her mother about this. Fourth, was their mental ability to adapt to certain situations and traumatic events. She couldn't really say much on that one. And lastly, though this one really isn't something to be feared but more of something that they are known for, is their belief in family. Mito was about to come up with something to think about but stopped dead in her tracks. Their belief in family? She asked. Emiya nodded and looked away slightly. Apparently they were known to cherish family above all else. Emiya snorted at that. Cherish my ass. Mine basically threw me out. He then looked towards Mito. Hey, are you alright? On the outside Mito was fine if a bit paler now, but on the inside, she was a mess. Family was everything. She thought. Her mother called herself a pure-blooded Uzumaki. Though after hearing this, she was having doubts. Mother, how could you call yourself an Uzumaki when you didn't give Naruto a chance to prove that he was not a beast? Naruto, who was your son, your own flesh and blood. He was not treated like family. He was discarded by family and forgotten by family. Mother, you are no Uzumaki if this is the way you treat family. Were the thoughts of Mito. Though she was quickly brought back to the room she was in by Emiya. Mito? He asked her with a bit of concern. Mito in turn blushed in embarrassment. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have space out. Emiya got up from his seat to sit next to her and then put his hand on her forehead. Are you sure? You seem to feel a bit heated. Are you feeling well? Mito's blush increased when he moved closer and had put his hand on her forehead. It was a combination of embarrassments from the way she acted and the fact that Emiya had moved so close and touched her to make sure she was alright. I am fine, don't worry. She said, stuttering at first. Are you sure? I can ask Seal for someone to check on you. Mito only shook her head as her face gained more color that wasn't red. I'm sure. Just then a knock was heard and Seal walked in with Ranmao attached to his arm. Emiya, you're why.oh, am I interrupting something? I can tell Miss Retsu that you'll be down in 5 minutes or more. Seal said with a small smirk. Emiya sighed. No, it's fine. I was just checking to see if she was sick and I should be going. I promised the little one that I'd pick her up something before I got home. Mito nodded at this. She had gotten what she wanted from him. Even though it wasn't the truth she was hoping for. It still was helpful, but a thought that had come to her mind as he was about to walk out the door. Emiya. Wait. She almost yelled. He turned back to face her at the sound of his name. Yes. She stood up, walked towards him, and looked at him with an expression that Emiya couldn't quite figure out. Emiya, I have to ask you a question because Seal and Aloy said that you might know or at least be able to give some sort of answer to. He nodded slowly with a confused expression on his face. Okay, what is it that you need? Though I beg that you hurry. My wife will grow impatient because we were supposed to leave when I was called here to talk to you. Oh, sorry about that. It's fine, now the question. Yeah, I wanted to know if you've seen a specific person. This person being my twin brother. Your twin brother? Does he look like you with the red hair or the violet eyes and had a fair skin tone? He asked curiously. Mito in turn shook her head. He has blonde golden-like hair, blood-red eyes like yours and slightly tanned skin. He'd actually most likely look like you, but he would have whisker marks on his cheeks. I think, like, 3 on each cheek. Oh, and he had red streak-like tattoos that ran all over his torso and some parts of his body. Emiya gave her a look that was something resembling a thinking pose. Did he have a name? He asked after a few seconds. Yeah, his name was Naruto Namikaze. She said with glint of hope in her eyes. Oh, remember him. At that Mito perked up. Really? Happiness showing in her eyes. Do you know where he is? She asked. Though as she watched him. The expression he gave her put a stop to her happiness. Mito, I'm sorry but he passed around the time my father died. He said with a frown. He died of an injury he sustained, I'm assuming, during his travel here. Mito froze and just looked at him with a blank expression. No emotion was given based off her face. Through her eyes showed that they were brimming with tears and she was quick to wipe them away. DHTH thank you. At least I finally know what happened to him. She said with a stutter. Emiya gave her a sad look. I'll see if I can get Seal to let your friends come here. You shouldn't have to go down to the party this way. Mito could only nod her head as she sat down on the couch she was sitting on before. He was right, she couldn't go down there now. Especially with the news of her brother perishing long ago. It was too much for her to handle at the moment. Naruto. Naruto then walked out the door and closed it. Only to hear his twin start to cry after he had closed the door. It truly pained him to do that, but what he said wasn't really a lie. The day his adoptive father died. Naruto Uzumaki was no more. That day he truly carried the Emiya name with pride. Seal, can you have her friends come up? The ones you mentioned that you saw with her when she walked in. He asked as they both walked towards the stairs that led to the exit. I'll have Ran Mao do it as soon as possible. He then looked to the woman attached to his arm and nodded. She left as soon as they reached the bottom stairs. Seal then looked to Naruto. I'll be honest with you. I really don't understand why you did that. She's going to find out eventually. Naruto sighed with an expression of slight sadness. It seemed he was doing that more often as the days went on. I did it because in a sense it's true. The idea and mentality of Naruto Namikaze, son of the Hokage and Yellow Flash, Minato Namikaze, is dead and was replaced by Naruto Emiya. Son of the Magnus Killer, Kiritsugu Emiya and descendant legacy of the King of Heroes, Gilgamesh. As they reached the door Naruto could see his wife, Retsu, was waiting there for them. You say that, but you still have a soft spot for your twin. You will never truly separate from that past identity for as long as she is around. You know this deep down and you can't deny it. The proof was in the room when you spoke to her. It may not have been obvious, but for someone like me who has lived for thousands of years, it isn't hard to see. Didn't know you would care about a human, let alone me. Naruto responded with a grunt. Seal gave him a small smirk. I'll admit that I do have my favorites. When you live this long and see every type of archetype a person can have, you normally find yourself liking 1 or 2 of them. Oh yeah? Then what am I? Seal shook his head and wagged his finger back and forth. That's a secret. For me to know and for you to eventually find out through me. Man, I can't even find out myself. And find out what? Retsu asked. It's nothing Retsu. He said with a dismissive shake of his head. Though Retsu could see that something was bothering him. Well, I hope you enjoyed the night, Seal said, and then proceed to take out a few suckers from one of his inside coat pockets. And here's something for your little one. As a way to compensate for what you did for our amusement. Naruto nodded his head in thanks. Then both him and Retsu thanked him for hosting the party and wished him a good night. As they walked back to one of the coaches, Naruto spoke up. Well, how did you enjoy the party? Naruto asked. Retsu, who was walking arm in arm with him, looked at him. Oh, it was quite nice actually. I spoke with a few friendly faces like Miss Haku and Miss Korra. I also saw Walter with Ichika dancing. I hope Ichigo didn't see them. She said with a giggle and Naruto chuckled as well. I don't have to worry about any foreign pursuers, do I? Naruto asked with another chuckle. Retsu also giggled at this. No, I don't think so. Though after her giggle she gave him a sideways glance. Her face showing concern. What did you do while you were away? At that Naruto stilled for fraction of a second, but that fraction, even though minute, had not gone unnoticed by his wife. When she noticed it, she stopped and in turn stopped him. Naruto, what's the matter? She asked, concern clearly in her voice. It's nothing. Nothing to worry about. He responded, trying to sound nonchalant about it. Though Retsu knew better. To others, he would have seemed perfectly fine, but Retsu knew her husband through and through. She'd say even better than the back of her hand. Naruto, what's wrong? She asked again. You know you can tell me anything. You can tell both Kurumi and I anything. She said and then hugged him gently. Naruto slowly and gently reached for Retsu's arms to separate them so that he could look down at her face with a soft smile. I met her again. He said in soft voice. Retsu gave him a confused look. Who? She asked. Naruto with his small smile chuckled. Mito. I spoke with Mito. My sister, my twin. Naruto's soft smile then changed from one of slight happiness to one of slight sadness. And I told her that I dead. The end. So how was this part? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this part with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.